The Jaguars are draft focused from here and the near future. What does that mean? And does it make it easier to team build? I got some help that's going to give us the answers, and I'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
For joining us again for another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars Daily Podcast, Tony Wiggins. And we thank you for making us your first listen because it's your team every day. Also, a quick reminder that you can subscribe for free to our YouTube page at Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button while you're there. Also, make sure you check in every single day for every episode, wherever you get your podcast on audio. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp helps you connect with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. I had to call in some reinforcements today because I know y'all tired of hearing me talk about the Jaguars and their strategy, so I have another expert from the Locked On Podcast Network, from Locked On NFL Draft, as well as the Draft Network, my man. I call him full-time Dame, but he is Damien Parson, and he is joining us right now. He's already smiling, so I'm going to just go ahead and put him on the screen. He's smiling. I'm going to give y'all some behind-the-scenes stuff because anybody that knows me, Dame, knows that I'm all into self-deprecation. Dame was supposed to be on us with us a while back. One of us overslept, and it wasn't him. So I'm just letting you know it took me about 3 weeks to bring him back, and it's just, y'all know how I roll, man. So sometimes these podcasts don't happen at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But glad to have my man Damien Parson in from Locked On NFL. What's up, bro?
What's going on, big bro? Man, I'm happy to be on with you, bro.
Man, you busy. You busy right now, because to get you back, I had to wait a couple of weeks. But that's what time of the year it is. How is it for you right now? Because I just cover one team, and then I do, of course, Locked On NFL on Wednesdays. But it's still not the same. How does it feel for you right now? I missed you in Mobile because I didn't make it this year. That and combine, and what is going on in your world as we get closer to the NFL draft?
It's been a blur, man. Like, once we got through NFL, the majority of NFL playoffs, right? And then we got to the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. Like, ever since then, it's just been like you blink and you miss it. You know what I mean? It's just like, man, a whole week in Mobile went by. A couple weeks later, we got a whole weekend in Indy that's gone by. Then we got pro days and everything else. So it's been hectic, man. It's been a lot going on, but a lot of fun. You know what I mean? It's when you love what you do, it's not work. That's what the older folks always told us. When it's when you love what you do, it's not work.
Yep, and I totally agree with you. It is a privilege to do this, and get paid for it.
100%.
And it's not work, but you still always have to be careful because this time of year there's so much misinformation. There are so many Tim Wakefield curveballs, man, and Mario Rivera cutters. You know what I'm saying? And so you got to learn what to believe and what not to believe. And the thing that there's a couple of things about the NFL that it just makes my head spin. One is when we talk about the cap, and we have to tell and remind people every year, if your team wants somebody, they can sign them. It's about cash over cap. The other thing is, don't believe everything you hear in the draft, because the most picks I've ever gotten right out of 32 was 8, and I hit the last 3. So that means I had 5 going into those last 3 picks. It is hard. It is hard to get a gauge on what will happen on that night and what teams will do. So if you can, let us know how that process right now is going, because I don't hear as much. I don't hear as much BS because we're getting closer. Now everybody's kind of getting quiet.
Yeah. No, and that's typically what it is, man. It's like we're so used to around this. Once April hits, it's like typically like last couple of weeks of March. Then you start getting all the like smoke screens, right? And it's like now, and even now, like you for the entire process for the Colts, it was Anthony Richardson. Then it was Lamar Jackson. Now they're NFL execs, per sources from different reporters, they're in on Will Levis now. And it's like, so the Colts have no idea what they're doing, is what you're telling me. You know what I mean? Like but it's like you just learn that it's just part of the game. You know what I mean? It's just part of the game. And like you said, it's just hard to hit on these draft picks and predict it, because at the end of the day, the NFL will always, when we think they're going to zig, they'll always zag. You know what I mean? And it's like, now, is that always a good thing? Like when you see somebody tweet out, well, the NFL's higher on this player than this player, it's like, for me, like in my seat, I take it with a grain of salt. I personally don't care if the NFL is higher on one player or the other. The reason why is because I've seen the NFL fail so many times. So it's like, yeah, I've seen them be high on players over somebody else that's better, and they're like, no, I like him better. He's higher. And then that player failed. We've seen that revolving door so much. Like the draft it's literally like playing, it's like playing craps. It's like playing 21, going to Vegas. It is truly like playing the slots. You don't know what you're going to get, and especially when teams pigeonhole themselves to one specific player, and then you get to the draft and you're right before your pick, a trade's in front of you, or that team in front of you snipes you, and you're like, oh, come on, man. Like now we got to pivot. And then you end up taking a player that you're not as high on, but it's like, well, he's a position of need. It's like, well, you should have put yourself in a better position to get the guy you actually wanted. So this whole process, man, is just, it takes, what's the phrase? Believe half of what you hear and less of what you see, or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And it's like, that's what the draft season is. Don't believe anything. Nothing is for certain until the draft kicks off and the commissioner walks up there with the card. That's when it's a solidified answer. You know what I mean? Nothing is for certain until then.
You're right. I wanted to get to this real quick. I was actually going to get to something else, but I have to say this. You mentioned blackjack, right? And so I'm just sitting here thinking, like, a good hand in blackjack today might not be a good one tomorrow. It depends on what the whole cards are, what the dealer's sitting there working with. Like 17, you might just be like, nah, that's it, right?
That's it.
And that's good if they got 16, but if 17, but they got 20, it's not good. So it's never universal. So I don't think drafts are universal. So that's why it and I don't know if you do this or not, but people go, I got 20 guys with a first round grade. And I'm thinking, like, if they were all the same, I would understand that term. No, you know how many guys I got with a first round grade? 31, because that's how many teams are picking this year. It's 31 guys with a first round grade, because there are 31 people who are going in the first round, correct? So correct. I hear people saying there's only 21 guys with a first round grade. What does that mean when the draft isn't the same every year? I don't get it.
Yeah. It's typically like, it's a scout speak, it's like how coach speak. It's just like, man, I don't believe there's 31 guys that should go in the first round. I'm like, well, that's every year, technically. You know what I mean? There's never a draft that has 32 first round actual players, but there's 32 players who are going to be selected in the first round every year. You know what I mean? Like, no matter if a team trades out of the first round, somebody else is trading up, there's still going to be 32 selections, except for this year due to the Miami Dolphins having to forfeit that pick. But typically, there's always going to be 32 players selected. So, yeah, that's just scout speak. That's all that is.
Yeah, it drives me absolutely crazy, because I wouldn't trade a pick in the top 40 in next year's draft. And this is advanced scouting, and we know they do all of this stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't trade a pick in the top 40 of next year's draft simply because of Caleb Williams and Drake May. The currency for next year's draft is going to be so much higher, not just because of trickle down, but because people might need your ammo to go up. And folks don't necessarily understand that. Like, so if you want to trade next year's first round pick to move up in this first round pick, I think it's a mistake. And the reason why I think it's a mistake, because regardless of where you're picking next year, somebody that wants to move up to the front might need your pick to help them move up to the front. So it becomes extremely valuable where it's a draft where people think there are at least two big time quarterbacks that are better than anybody in this draft. So that's one of the things we want to focus on. Look, I'm going to find out from you, because the Jaguars have adopted this team building strategy where they're not focused on free agency. They said it, they meant it, they haven't done it. They're going to now go in team building mode. I want to know if this is a good draft to be at number 24. We're going to talk about it in segment 2. The other part of that is this. If they're doing that, people think because we were talking about the Colts, they got all of this, they need a quarterback, so you don't know what they're doing, right? And now there's pressure. The Jaguars don't have that pressure, but they do have a different type of pressure because now, in my opinion, because you have QB1, you cannot screw it up at all because now it is not going to be an excuse like Ron Rivera said, why haven't y'all won? And everybody else in the division, well, we didn't get quarterback right. The Jaguars have. So now comes the pressure, and I want to find out if this is a good year to be in the first year of not addressing that in free agency. And we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars after I let you know about today's sponsor. And today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Look, man, I have been in some tough situations in life, and I'm transparent enough at this point, I always wasn't, to let you know that BetterHelp is there for you, and it is a professional therapy, and we all may need that at some point. Now, BetterHelp is there. It's always there. It's 24 hours a day, and you can get the help that you know, because getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want and why we react the way we do until we talk things through. Now, I benefited from it. It's helped me. I probably wouldn't be sitting here able to do these shows without the therapy. And you can do it too. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, we're bringing segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars on this beautiful, I don't know if it's beautiful where you are, Damien. It's kind of nice.
It is. It's sunny out here. It's sunny. It's a little chilly this morning, but it's sunny.
It's not sunny here. It's chilly, but people around here need to be cooled off, man, because it gets a little warm here in Florida. And so today, we'll put up at these little 48, 49 degrees.
Right.
We were talking about team building strategy. As you know, the Jaguars have gone to a draft and develop strategy. They're not going to focus on free agency more, which is easy to do once you have a quarterback. And they really, really went heavy on free agency for 2 years. Knowing what we know about this draft with our blackjack scenario, okay, is this a good draft to have 24 based on what the Jaguars appear to be needing to help their team?
I think so, man. I mean, they need to add another body to the pass rush on the defensive line. Another corner will be very beneficial to that secondary. And of course, bringing in Calvin really helps, having Christian Kirk. But one thing about Trevor Lawrence, you go back to his time at Clemson, he's always had those big body receivers, whether it was Justin Ross, T. Higgins. He's always had those type of guys. So adding another wide receiver to complete the wide receiver core for him will be good as well. And sitting at 24, I think the Jaguars are in a good spot, man. And you think about guys, especially at the cornerback position. I think there's going to be a run on the top 4 to 5 guys in the first round. Once we get past, I think, of course, we all know there's going to be a run on the quarterbacks. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if the first 4 picks off the board aren't quarterbacks. If a team moves up and trades up to number 3 with the Arizona Cardinals. So I think, understanding that there's going to be some runs with quarterback. I think there's going to be a run with tackles, with the offensive line as well. And if that happens, it's going to push those corners down the board. Then you got Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Tyree Wilson, Miles Murphy. Those type of guys could also push cornerback down the board. And you guys can end up getting yourself a premier talent like a Deonte Banks out of Maryland, 6'2", 195, 200 pounds, explosive, elite level caliber athlete, a guy that's physical and press man coverage, a guy that gives you all of the traits and skill sets to put on the island and say, you know what, this is going to be my CB1 of the future, right? Or pair up well with, I believe it's Tyson Campbell that you guys have out there in Jacksonville. So now you have a 1A, 1B type of scenario, and that would be great for you. Also, I mean, you also think about the tackle situation. I know you got Walker Little and Big Cam Robinson, but losing Jawan Taylor, the right tackle position is kind of it's one that you need to keep your eye on, right? So what if they decide to say, hey, let's go with DeJuan Jones, big boy out of Ohio State at 24. That's a reasonable pick. 6'8", 380, former basketball player, but he's nimble enough with his footwork. And you listen to Big Ten rushers, or you just watch the tape. It's not many guys that beat him. You know what I mean? You got to
Right.
truly get the jump on him, because with that crazy arm length, that size, his arm length, he casts a wide net. That's a guy that can really play and meet you at the apex of your rush. And then a guy that could just ride you around the edge, around the arc, if you want to be that outside rusher. So you're going to have some inside counters if you plan on beating this guy on a consistent basis. So you think about him, and if a Quentin Johnston fell, right, 6'2", 210, 4'4" type of guy. I don't really care about his pro day 40 time, because I know what I've seen on tape. Like, the dude beats fast corners, but like 40 inches in the vertical. Talked to a coach that coached him, and was on the coaching staff at TCU, and he's like, man, this kid's such a hard worker. We had to pull him off the practice field because he'd be out there by himself, just getting in work, trying to get better. And it's like, those are the things that you love to hear about a prospect. So you think about Quentin Johnston, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and the one other spot I think that they should and could look at is tight end. Like, yes, you brought back Evan Ingram too on the franchise tag, but at the same time, if you can get a Luke Musgrave, if you can get a Michael Mayer, or if Dalton Kincaid's back checks out, because back injuries can be tricky, but if that back injury is fine, you look at him, and or if you go, second round, you look at a guy like my guy out of Iowa, Sam Laporta, who I compared to Mark Andrews. Like, I love Sam Laporta's game. So like you guys are in a good position because you know what you have. You've already tasted playoff success. Now it's all about just compounding that, adding that throughout the draft, and hitting those. Typically, like the way that they're trying to build a team more so through the draft, that could be tricky, because there's always a phrase in evaluating the team building. Just it's basically like you don't want to go into the grocery store when you're starving.
Yeah,
right?
man.
Because then you start buying stuff you don't need to buy because you're so hungry. Like, it's that type of situation. Like, you don't want to get caught in the draft where you have 3 or 4 like holes in your roster that you didn't at least bring a good veteran in that could be a plug and play starter that could start while you get a 3rd, 4th round guy that has high upside and that you can develop them. So if you didn't do that, and it's like, man, I got 3 major needs, and you try to hit all 3 in the draft, that could be tricky because you just don't know. As we talked about, the draft is so unpredictable. You don't know if you're going to be able to get those positions filled with the talent that you want to fill them.
No doubt about it, man. And you are dead right. I think I've even used that analogy. You want to go grocery shopping when it's just time to go grocery shopping, right? Correct. And that's what time it is right now. It's time to draft and it's time to eval. You want to go in and buy things that are on sale and bulk up and stock up and load that pantry up so that for the next 3 weeks, you never need anything. Everything's always right there, right? Okay, you need to do the next man up, boom, boom. The problem with going in with a full stomach or an empty stomach is you think about right now. So you go by the deli. Well, you know what deli food does? It doesn't last very long because it's already cooked, right?
Correct.
So that's the same thing with trying to go shopping with needs, because you can look past better play. See, teams who fill needs don't win Super Bowls. The team with the best players win Super Bowls. And the object and the goal is to win a Super Bowl. So here, what I'm going to do in segment 3, I'm going to ask you hot versus not guys. Not necessarily guys who are slipping, but names that you might have heard that you all of a sudden. I heard a report this morning. I think it was Jim Nagy that said he talked to people and they said there's only one wide receiver in the first round, and that's JSN. So I want to talk about that. And then I'm going to just flat out ask you, WWDD, what would Dame do if you were the Jacksonville Jaguars? And we'll get to that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars after I let you know that today's sponsor is FanDuel. Man, listen, let me tell you something. Grand slams, no hitters, double plays are back. And there's no better place to get in on Major League Baseball action than FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. That's right. Right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/locked-on, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. Yeah, you heard me. If you don't win. I think it's so important. All of those things are extremely important. And there's no better place to get all the information on who the starter is, how many days of rest he's had, as well as some things like who is in that bullpen. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. And I'm sitting there talking to my partner. Speaking of partners, my man Damien Parson from Locked On NFL Draft, as well as the Draft Network. So make sure you check him out and find him. He might have 2-3 more jobs too. I don't know. But you find him. He's always there. Hot versus not. Now I'm gonna say this with this caveat. The Jaguars are in a little bit of a tough position, and what I mean by that is, when asked what does the team need to improve the most, without hesitation, Doug Peterson says pass rush. They drafted Trayvon Walker last year. They have Josh Allen. They love Trayvon. I do too. And they seemingly love Josh, right? He's on a 5th-year option. And every time you mention maybe trading him away, that you get a chuckle because it's like they're not going to do it. They love him. The fans love him. But if you got 2 players that people love, and one was a number 1 pick, one was a 7th overall pick, but your biggest need is still at that same position, where you're in a little bit of a quandary, because now you can't continue to allocate more resources to that same position. And who gets drafted in the first round and doesn't start unless the team is a Super Bowl team? So I mentioned that to mention this before I asked you, what would you do? You mentioned a bunch of prospects. A lot of guys I love: Deontay Banks, Musgrave, DeJuan Jones. You ain't mentioned one pass rush, but they said that they need a pass. And this is the quandary that I keep telling people. This is a problem. Whether you want to look at it or not, it is a problem. So knowing what I just said, you're the Jaguars. You come up on 24th. Everybody on your wish list. Don't tell me JSN or Skoronski. They're gone. But everybody that could possibly realistically be on your wish list based on what you've seen, what would you do? Now, what if you get to 24 and there's 10 guys? Would you try to move back, or would you just make the pick, and who would the pick be?
Man, if you have 10 guys you really like, I got to go to the top of the board in terms of where I have them ranked, right? And understand, all right, what's my biggest need? And then it's like, all right, if Nolan Smith is on the board from Georgia, the edge rusher, if somehow he's on the board at 24, and it's like, well, Nolan Smith or a receiver or the 8th or 9th corner in that specific situation, I'd rather go Nolan Smith. And the reason why I'd rather go Nolan Smith, because I believe in giving myself that pass rushing flexibility. Trayvon Walker was a guy in Georgia, God bless them. They're 2-time back-to-back national champions, but all they had their defensive guys do is go out there and be athletes.
I told
Jordan
people that.
Davis, Devonta Wyatt, Trayvon Walker, Nolan Smith included. These are physically gifted, God-given, and godly blessed individuals that they did not develop from a technical, mechanical standpoint when it comes down to rush plan, hand placement, hand usage, and counters. But you look at what Nolan Smith has. Not only did he run a 4.38 or 4.39 at the combine, but you watch his tape, he has the bend, he has the burst, he has the speed, especially in the league where it's so much more athletic quarterbacks, dual threat type of quarterbacks, right? You get to the playoffs and you see a Justin Herbert and they like to bootleg him out. Well, you don't want to bootleg him, to Nolan Smith's side. Because if I want, he's very disciplined with his eyes. And with his eyes being disciplined, that means he's going to see ball. He's going to know that your quarterback still has it. He's going to go get your quarterback. And then he's one of those guys you're not really going to outrun at all. So you got to be wary of him on the backside of those bootlegs, right? So, or just the fact that when things break down and you got those quarterbacks that want to improvise, right? Well, having a Nolan Smith along as a Josh Allen, and then that allows you to kick Trayvon Walker back inside and put him right up ahead of guards to where now it's a clear mismatch with that arm length, that explosiveness, and that power. So that gives that not only does it add juice to your pass rush, but it adds flexibility, because then you can really start moving guys around. You can think about those amoeba defenses back in the day where everybody's standing around, moving around, and you got that one defensive tackle that's head up on the center. It's a zero tech that's going to rush the passer, but they don't know who else is coming. And you could do those type of things because Nolan can stand up, Trayvon can stand up, and Josh Allen can stand up. So it's like you can have all three of those guys in 2-point stances, but they can all be shifting around if you desire to really confuse blocking schemes and the quarterback, because the quarterback's trying to also figure out, all right, who's hot, who's not. Like where's the pressure coming from? Where's my hot route, and can I get the ball to him? And if you don't know where it's coming from, you can actually throw into the pressure. And then when those type of athletic guys, those guys can actually make a play on the football and take the ball away. So if a Nolan Smith is there, but also you think about, like I said, if Deonte Banks is on the board, I think about getting that. And at the same, like I said, yes, you have Tyson Campbell, but in this league today, you need 2 bookend corners. It's not enough to have one. You need 2 guys. I talked about this when I was on the Locked On Falcons. I was like, you think back to what Rex Ryan had with Darrelle Revis and Antonio Cromartie. He had 2 island corners, right? And what he started doing, cover 0, cover 1. It's like, I don't need 2 safeties in the back for what? I got 2 guys that can lock up anybody outside. That means I can send pressure. I can make you get the ball out of your hands so much quicker than you want to. And then I got 2 guys who are press man specialists. Yes. So not only will I force you to get the ball out, I'm forcing you to get the ball out with not much room to throw, because my guys are in their hip pocket. They're physical at the line. The timing is already off because you're sped up. And now those guys are getting hemmed up at the line of scrimmage like they're bouncers throwing them out of a club. So It's like those type of things. What for me, if it's what would Dame do is like, I would try and improve the defensive side of the ball, because with Trevor Lawrence, you saw the growth to him, that second half of the season last year, right? Even into the playoffs. So you saw that growth with this young man. You bring in Calvin Ridley, Travis, Etienne is there. Just, the offensive line should be solidified. Like I said, Walker Little kicks over the right tackle. I think for me, it's like getting this defense where you want the quarterback to feel like, I don't have to do everything. I always use the example of, would I rather have Steph Curry, who's the team-friendly guy, like the guy who we know he's an elite star, he's a Hall of Fame generational talent and player, but he does whatever the team needs him to. Hey, if Draymond got to bring the ball up and he's got to play off ball, he's going to do that. Or do I want Russell Westbrook, where I got you Kevin Durant and you still driving it on 5 people instead of kicking it out to the corner? Are you going to play a hero ball? So I want my quarterback to feel like you don't have to play hero ball. We have enough talent where you could just play complimentary in some games. We don't always need you to throw for 400 yards. I mean, you look at Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl. It was a shootout essentially, but Jalen Hurts had a much better statistical day. I mean, and even impact than he did, right? But when the defense was able to make a play, they made a play. They would have complimented them in some way, shape, or form. So you don't need your quarterback to throw for 400. I don't want Trevor walking in any game, even against Patrick Mahomes, when you see him again. I want Trevor to be able to feel confident our defense can keep them out under 30 points, under 28, and say, you know what, Trevor, go out there and do your thing. Because when you start putting that pressure on guys, that's when they start pressing and making mistakes. So that's how I would probably do it, is if I can get either a top-tier corner, top-tier edge rusher, that's the move I would make. But if one of those guys aren't there, if that isn't the scenario, then you look at, like I said, receiver for sure. Quentin Johnston falls, I'm turning that card in if one of my top defenders are not there on the board. If I have Quentin Johnston valued or ranked higher than the next corner or edge, I'm gonna take a Quentin Johnston.
I've been thinking about big receiver for a while, because when you talked about Evan Ingram being their franchise, well, he ain't even a big tight end. And at some point, when you talk about a team that always talks about traits, well, they don't have them. They got a 6'1" receiver, a 5'11" receiver, and I'm being generous when I say Kirk is 5. I've stood right next to him, right? Zay Jones is 6'2", right. and he has Zay have a great game, and then he'll drop some balls, and I do think that they need that guy. And so, what's the difference between Quentin Johnson, Cedric Tillman, and let's just say a guy like Jonathan Mingo?
Man, with QJ, he's going to give you more after the catch. Quick twitch. When I remember a coach compared it, he's like, he's got that Hakeem the Dream shake. You see him when you see him run those stop routes, and he catches the ball. He gives you that little 2-step. Defender, goes one way, he goes the opposite direction. But for a 6'2", 200+ pound receiver, the twitchiness and suddenness in terms of where he can stop and start and break out of his routes and then start back up post catch. Mm-hmm. It's insane to sit there and watch. You watch the Kansas game. I think it's Oklahoma State. You just watch those games. Once that Kansas game happened, you start seeing it. He beat Keely Ringo in the national championship game. Yeah. Just Max Duggan didn't give him the ball. It was a touchdown too. It would have been about a 60, 70-yard touchdown down the sideline. He double tapped him, gave him a little stutter and go, and he was gone. You know what I mean? Keely Ringo's a 4.3 guy. That's why I said I don't care what he ran at his pro day. I've seen them beat 4.3 and 4.4 guys with ease, man. So, for him, that's what separates him. Mingo, I think Mingo has the body type, athleticism to be a AJ Brown-esque type of receiver, but he's still raw because of that offense Lane Kiffin ran at Ole Miss. It didn't give him a lot of pro style routes and concepts. So it's like, okay, that's something he's going to have to develop into. But this is a versatile guy because they put him in the backfield. They allowed him at H-back tight end. They put him in the slot, out wide. They moved him everywhere. Now there's kind of a con to that. It's like, well, he's a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, now you want to see if he can master being an X receiver at 6'2", 220, 4.45 in the 40. And I believe he jumped 38 to 40 inches as well. Cedric Tillman is more of he's a guy that can win vertical because he has great ball skills. In my opinion, a guy that can go up and get the ball and attack it like a power forward going for the rebound, right? Like if he feels like the mouse is in the house, he's going to throw that hand up like, go ahead and give me a shot. Right. But, he's a guy that doesn't have he's not as fast as those guys or as explosive or twitchy. But, man, you think about those end breakers, the big body, the just box guys out on the quick game and a bit of the work. And working in the middle of the field isn't the same as it was a decade and a half ago. You know what I'm saying? Where, man, Bob Sanders might take my head off. You know what I mean? I come across on this end breaker. I got it, like they said, keep your head on the swivel. Nowadays, guys don't really keep their head on the swivel. They just focus on the football because they know if you try to take my head off, that's a flag now. You know what I mean? So defenders are a little bit, they ease up in terms of those type of hits. But it's a guy that doesn't care about going between the hashes. He can work between there. He can work in the slot if you need him to. He's a guy that they pigeonholed Tennessee in Josh Heupel's offense on the outside. He was always lined up on the right side of the field, which is a little different than you typically see, but a good player. And I think day 2 type of pick. So, it just really depends on, what's available. If QJ's there, it's like, all right, do I risk not getting QJ and hoping that I can get Jonathan Mingo in the 3rd or 4th? Depends on where you value him, right? Like where you grade him out as a team. If you feel like he's 4th round, do you want to test him? Like, we can get Jonathan Mingo on the 4th, knowing that that's not exactly how this thing how it plays out. So it doesn't play out like that. So I think that's the difference between those guys. I would lean QJ. I think QJ is a better player and has a higher ceiling as well. With the athleticism, with the quick twitch and the movement skills, and he's going to be a great asset when you think about the quick game. He can work the quick game, and his ability to create after the catch is so special to me.
Real quick, the hot name that nobody really expects, and then a name that people talked about that's falling a little bit.
Man, when you think about falling, you think about guys like edge rushers, like Isaiah Foskey. I don't know the name. A guy that was coming out of the summer, man, he was pegged as a top 15 prospect,
no doubt.
And then the season went on, and we get to the draft season, and it's a name you don't hear. You know what I mean? It's like, man, he might fall to the second, and this is still a good player. A guy that you still got to work on some things with in terms of like technically, but wild enough, outside of like even with Will Anderson, there's still like hand usage. Like there's a lot of guys in this class that need to work on their hands and become more technically refined in that regard. But that's a name that's not as hot as it used to be, and that's kind of what caught me off guard. And of course, I think when you think about a hot name at this point, you think about a Jalen Hyatt, man. Tennessee, everybody loves speed because speed is something you can't teach. And it's like, he's more of a boomer bust prospect, not a great route runner. Still got some stuff he's got to iron out with his game in terms of polish, but the speed is legitimate. 4.41, and if you give him a free run at safeties like Tennessee was doing, that's touchdowns. That's 207 yards and 5 touchdowns like he had against Alabama. So I think when you think about a hot name, it is a Jalen Hyatt. And you look at teams like a Kansas City, I've seen Baltimore and different things of that nature. So it's like, man, you want to add that speed element to your offense. That's one of the hot names in this draft.
I think a lot of people, when they look at him, they think Will Fuller.
Oh yeah,
and I look at him and I say, okay, but and ain't nothing wrong with these guys, but he could be MVS, and he could be Robbie Anderson, and that's fine. But from a consistency standpoint,
right,
it's not what Will Fuller.
And are you drafting that in the first round?
Right, like, there you go, man. You too good, man, because now everybody's gonna be telling me get him back, and I know that's probably impossible before the draft, man. But we'll be watching you
after the draft. I'll be here. It's not a problem.
Let everybody know where you're at and where they can reach you, bro.
And follow me on Twitter at DP_NFL. If you're a YouTube person, go to YouTube, type in Locked On NFL Draft, go subscribe, hit the bell notification so you know we drop 5 days a week. Always have content for you. But if you're an audio person, go on your favorite podcasts and apps and find Locked On NFL Draft. Go subscribe, share it, leave a 5-star review. You know what I mean? Download all the episodes. So we got like a lot of content coming to you. We just did mock draft. We just did mock draft Monday. So that's today's episode. And we tapping into, this or that, Dame's dudes on tomorrow episode. So tap in with us 5 days a week.
Tap in. What he said. That's what I'm gonna just say. What he said. My man Damien Parson, man, we definitely appreciate you here on Locked On Jaguars, and thank you for joining us. And I'm gonna just go ahead and sign off right here with you on there. Make sure y'all do what I say, man. Y'all take care of each other, and we'll see you tomorrow on another edition of Locked On Jaguars.